Morning, everyone. We'll just give other attendees a minute or so to join us. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, maybe tell us the company you're joining from, what was of particular interest for the discussion today. And we will start in 30 seconds or so. Hi, Matt. Thanks for the wave. Let's get started. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning for our panel discussion on supporting young employees to overcome debt and build financial success. We chose this topic in honour of the theme of credit for this year's Talk Money Week and wanted to bring some focus to the discussion through the lens of one particular employee group, those just starting out or in the first few years of their career. But as we all know, debt and the climb out of it is something that can impact any of us at any stage of our life and career. And conversely, not all young employees are necessarily struggling with debt. So I'm sure the conversation will broaden and there will be kind of financial well-being tools and tips that could benefit many in the organisation. Some quick housekeeping. We will be sharing a recording of the session and all of those that registered for today. So please do feel free to share that with others who really find it interesting to watch. And if you do want to ask a question to the panel today, please use the Q&A window in your Zoom. Okay, so who are we? I'll go first and then I'll let the other panelists introduce themselves in a minute. I'm Stacey and I'll be facilitating the discussion today. I'm Head of Employee Wellbeing and a financial coach at Claro. Now, we deliver financial wellbeing through one-to-one financial coaching, in-person workshops and virtual team webinars, alongside our educational courses and content and budgeting tools on our financial wellbeing platform. I'll share Claro's website in the chat actually and encourage other panelists to share their websites too, so people can look them up. Victoria, would you like to introduce yourself next?
Thank you, Stacey, and good morning, everybody. I'm Victoria Copeland. I am one of the regional partnerships managers for the Money and Pension Service, and we're a government-backed organisation that offers free support, guidance and information about all money topics, including debt, but all money topics. We span really pocket money through to pensions. And we do this through our digital resources, our website, Money Helper, and we've got a contact centre, and I'll tell you more about that later on in the discussion.
Wonderful, thank you. Matt, how about you?
Thank you and good morning, everyone. My name is Matt. I'm Managing Director of Debt Free Advice. We're a partnership of 16 charities working together to provide free and impartial advice to those suffering with problem debt. We're fully funded by the Money and Pension Service, which means our advice is always free at the point of access to those that need it. We've been delivering our advice in our face-to-face advice centres across London for the last 16 years, where we've helped just over 300,000 families managing their debts and their financial worries on a daily basis. And this November, due to the cost of living crisis, we're really excited to be able to offer our service not just to those living and working in London, but across the country. So we've previously been called Debt Free London, and on the 17th of November, we'll be rebranding to Debt Free Advice, allowing our free and impartial access advice via video chat, telephone, WhatsApp and web chat to anybody nationwide.
Oh, that's so great to hear, Matt. And last but not least, Anna, hello.
Hi everybody, so I'm Anna Buckle, I'm Head of Employee Experience at Pay Captain. Pay Captain was established in 2020 to try and sort of create a better payroll experience for the people being paid, and a much easier way of processing payroll, those who have to do the outside. And we also strongly believe that payroll provides a really great engagement tool for employers and their employees, so driving financial resilience and financial wellness tools through that as well.
Wonderful. Quite the lineup of experts. I hope everybody joining agrees. Alrighty, so we're going to cover a number of different areas on the topic of young people and debt today, the various challenges that young people face with debt, why employers should be doing their part to alleviate that burden, ways to improve financial well-being in the workplace, particularly for your younger talent, and the benefits of financial well-being for young employees and in turn their employers. So a good place to start, perhaps I'll ask Matt this one first and then Victoria. What are the debt challenges that young people are facing?
Thank you. So young people we know have been disproportionately affected by the pandemic. They were the first to be furloughed. They're also struggling with housing costs and their student loans that they've had from their education. They're often more likely to be early in their careers, so their earning potential is lower than that of colleagues in your organisation. So we know that they're really, really worried about their finances, especially those living in cities like London, where the cost of living is already so high. We also know that younger people are less likely to speak about their finances, which is great that we can raise awareness during this and Talk Money Week. In fact, a survey that we did last year reveals that young people are more likely to tell their pets than their partners or family relatives about any financial worries that they have. And kind of second to your own health concerns, finance is the next thing that people don't speak about at all. So in terms of the workplace, it may be something that you see alongside in times of staff sickness, staff not being able to come into the office because of travel expenditures. If we're thinking of new colleagues that are joining our workforce, especially if they're first-time joiners to the workforce, things like travel, what you might wear to the office, those kind of first impressions, are all things that are going to be an additional burden that we might not think of as kind of experienced colleagues in the workplace, but for those joining for the first time, really does that. Looking at our advice and why people turn to us for advice, we help just over 20,000 people a year with debt. 2/3 of those customers come to us with a debt relating to housing. So that's rent arrears, council tax, and utility bills as well. Now, what we've seen more recently in this year during the cost of living crisis is actually we haven't yet seen an increase in gas and electric. But we have in water, which might strike you as surprising, first of all. But if we dig a little bit deeper, the majority of our customers that turn to us for debt advice are on prepayment meters for their gas and their electric. So they'll be choosing to self-disconnect from those utilities, whereas water, you can't be on a prepayment meter for that because you can't be cut off, but you can be building up arrears. And we have seen a double percentage point increase in those customers coming to us with water bills. So there's a question around how our colleagues, and again, especially our younger colleagues, are keeping warm, keeping clean during the winter months. So questions around what we can do in terms of the workforce is if your business has staff showers, about making those available to everyone, but promoting that that's available, perhaps opening up and encouraging the office people to come in and stay later. Maybe you can frame that around fitness during the winter months and have a team, a running team or something like that. But they're the debts that we're seeing, and we are increasingly concerned, as I said, especially around younger colleagues in the workforce that are more likely to be sharing accommodation or sofa surfing around that. I suppose what's really important, and kind of my message throughout today's webinar, will be that debt is really common. It doesn't discriminate, and people that are worried about it are probably not telling you. So what we can be doing as really good employers, especially during Talk Money Week, is raising the awareness of free advice services like debt-free advice, like all the other ones that the Money and Pension Service fund, and encourage anybody that is concerned to seek advice as early as possible. The sooner people seek advice, the more tools advisors are going to have in their toolkit to help you through it. Yeah, that's me.
Gosh, Victoria, anything to add on?
Well, Matt did a fantastic job. He said all the things I was thinking I would say. So I'm just going to take it back because he's been right on point, because he's mentioned Talk Money Week a number of times. So I'm just going to frame or just give the context of Talk Money Week to you all. And I'm going to read this. I'm going to read a little bit of a script here because I've got to make sure I get this right. But I think this is really important in the workplace and really important for people who are trying to take care of their colleagues in the workplace. And this can manifest itself in different ways. It could be the HR department, could be line managers who can pick up when somebody's anxious or seems to be concerned, particularly if they're junior members of staff. Or it could be that you're an organisation that's got mental health first aiders, and it's worth being mindful that money could be one of the problems that's affecting people's mental health, and knowing what to do and where to signpost them to. But Talk Money Week is really just about that. It's about encouraging communication and encouraging anybody and everybody to talk about money, and indeed anything that worries them. And when that can be at home, but it can also be in the workplace. And the workplace is a really important conduit, particularly for younger people, because if it's their first job, they're quite often in an alien environment, and they're starting to form new relationships and making friends at work. So it is a great place for them to talk and to bring their concerns. And they will look up to potentially to line managers and to HR departments as having people that will have more experience and can help them. So I think that's really important, that you do encourage the dialogue, encourage people to talk, and be prepared to talk about money, not be too British about it, because we're not very good at talking about money. Talk Money Week is about bringing the conversations that can be awkward out in the open, and we learn a lot from doing that. And it's, if people feel supported and feel they can speak up, and that the individuals that they're talking to can signpost them to helpful resources, that will be really helpful in supporting their mental health and their performance at work. And we are talking about the workplace here.
Wonderful. Thanks, Victoria. And thank goodness we have people like you going to Parliament this afternoon to talk about Talk Money Week and some of these problems that with people who have the power for policy change that can help as well. Interesting times when we're having a discussion on young people and debt, and most people would immediately think of student debt, and that hasn't even come up yet, which is probably indicative of the times that we're in. Claro did a campaign last year in London on say bye to buy now, pay later. We found that the younger age group are those kind of who are most vulnerable or most receptive to using a lot of these new very easy pay systems and getting in debt through some of these tech innovations of like buy now, pay later, which can also just exacerbate the problem for them. A lot of the webinars that I'm doing with organizations on the cost of living, at least one person asks, how long are we going to be in this situation for? So I wonder, Matt, if you have a view on, is this debt problem particularly poignant and a sign of the times that we're in, and it's cyclical and it's going to go away, or how long do you think it's going to last, or do you think it's just going to get worse for young people? Is there a light at the end of the tunnel for them? What are your thoughts on that?
I hate to be the bearer of bad news. I don't have any light at the end of any tunnels at the moment. Looking at the Bank of England kind of forecasts and what the government is saying, we're in this for the long haul. We're looking at a recession over the next couple of years, and that's going to hit young people. We've already seen some of the big tech firms start to make high numbers of redundancies. So it's especially worrying for people that are leaving university this year and next year, and even possibly the year after that. also mention like what's going to happen to these particularly young people and where they're going to turn to finances. So there's a trend in the buy now, pay later markets, specifically targeting younger people and younger females as a demographic as well. Just in the last few weeks, we've seen Deliveroo partner up with Klarna, so you can pay for your takeaways over 3 installments. This is really, really concerning. And then kind of the trends that we're seeing from our younger customers turning to us for advice is people that have been encouraged to spend more going through a checkout process. Christmas is coming up. Everybody likes to be generous and to celebrate and be supportive of their friends and family during that time. There is a big risk that people will get into additional debt in the coming months, and be encouraged to do so because they can split it over three payments at interest free, which is fine in principle when you take out that credit. But what happens over the next 3 months, anything can change. You know, the markets and the energy climate is so fruitile at the moment. We could be paying much more for energy in a few months' time than we are today. Your housing costs, we've seen the Bank of England's interest rate rise just last week. That will impact anybody on a mortgage, but not too distant. It will impact those people that are renting next time you come to renew your tenancy as well. So something that you think is affordable today in 3 months' time might be a real challenge to pay back. And that's when those interest rates from those buy now, pay later organisations are quite steep. So again, you know, repeat that same message. If people find themselves in financial difficulty, the earlier you seek free and impartial advice, the more options are going to be available. If you don't want to seek advice straight away, that is my number one recommendation today. My next one is speak to your lender, be that your landlord, be that your buy now, pay later, or your credit card or your bank. Again, as soon as they know about the problem, they're able to put more things in place to support, especially if you're a vulnerable customer and you are concerned about your housing situation. The risk is if people bury their heads in the sand and they don't contact their lender and they're not seeking advice, that credit provider is going to start to panic and they're going to start to follow their steps for those debt recovery options, which is when things can turn really, really nasty. So again, yeah, repeat that important message. If you're worried about money, seek free and impartial advice and speak to your lender as soon as possible.
Yeah, really important message, Matt. Money seems to be something that we only talk about when we feel like we need to talk about it, when there's no other option, but to admit the difficulty that we're in. And yeah, let's use Talk Money Week to encourage people to have those conversations about money before the kind of desperation kicks in. And it's a conversation you can have before you really need to have it. And that can help build, you know, the education and the tools, get the support that we need before we're in real trouble. Keen to bring Anna into the conversation. Anna, debt is kind of one factor amongst young people that makes them vulnerable to financial shocks or to periods of recession, like the cost of living that we're going through. Can you talk more about the need for young employees to build financial resilience that would enable them to manage their finances and through such financial shocks? And debt is one part, not being in debt is one part of building that financial.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Stacey. So I think the biggest thing really that people can be looking to do in terms of starting to build out financial resilience for themselves is around education to begin with. And you know, it's a very well documented point that we don't get this education via the school network now. I know that is one of the key 5 strategies for focus in the money services, but building out financial education is really important, helping people understand when, you know, what decisions are going to be beneficial for them and being able to seek out that information. I think the other thing in terms of financial resilience, which is a tricky topic right now because of the cost of living, but is really around having savings. So people who've got that savings buffer of, you know, £200 to £300, is a massive way to build resilience, but that can be very tricky for some people to do. Talking about a savings buffer of £200, if you're on a low income and you've got bills to pay and you can't make ends meet, that's really difficult to achieve. Via Pay Captain, we have savings pots that people can use to make savings via payroll itself, which is shown as a really, really good way of being able to do it. You don't notice that as so much because it's being deducted straight via payroll, as opposed to you having to take action to move money into your savings account. And we found that people are building up really good buffers, even making very small contributions each pay period. So looking at micro saving, a couple of pounds a month, starting to build up those buffers really helps build the financial resilience. Then if you do get one of those financial emergencies or a sort of surprise throughout the month, you have got something there that can help you. I think from an employer perspective, making sure that you've got great signposting as well of resources that can help support people. So of course, all of the resources that the Money and Pension Service Money Helper website provides, and everything via Debt Free London as well, that we can also be signposting, but making sure people have got that awareness of where to go if something happens. And yeah, ideally, if they can do, really encouraging people to build up that savings buffer.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Anna. Yeah, it's kind of doing the opposite of what buy now, pay later is. It's leveraging the technology now available, open banking now available to make it easier for people to save, be that via payroll like Pay Captain or other innovations in tech out there, where it's roundups, auto saving, making it almost difficult for people not to do it once you've put that infrastructure in place. Great. Okay, I can just see, talking of signposting, actually, just so some of the panelists are aware, some of your messages in the chat have gone just to hosts and panelists. So if you just want to change your setup so those chats are shared with everyone, that would be really helpful. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to the next section then. So why employers should be doing their part to alleviate the burden. Victoria, let's start with you. How does personal debt and money stress impact young people's work and career? So beyond them not having the conversations that they need to be having, how else might employers, notice or identify somebody who might be struggling with debt in the workplace?
Yeah, there's been quite a bit of research done on this, and it's a really important topic and a good one to raise. Some research done actually by Neighbour, who are now Salary Finance, revealed that 55% of the workforce reported that money worries affected how they performed at work. And this can be manifested in a number of ways, but presenteeism is a bit of a strange word, but quite a common manifestation of stress at work, and this is when somebody turns up that basically isn't really there, so it's going through the motions of working. That can mean obviously they're not very effective at the tasks they've been asked to do, which obviously will affect productivity, affect their performance, and obviously could affect their career progression or even their ability to maintain a role. So that obviously is potentially very career limiting, but of course the flip side of that as well is it could be really dangerous depending on the kind of job that they're doing. It could be personally dangerous if they're not paying full attention to the task at hand. It could affect their colleagues. It could be dangerous for customers. So being aware and being well at work and being present at work is really important. So that's kind of sort of the background to this and why it's important. And I work with all sorts of different employers. My area is West London, but I work with some organisations who have their HQs in London. And employers have different ways of trying to support the workforce. Current times, I think it's quite focused with the cost of living. Some of the interventions that some organisations are doing. One quite common one is increasingly people are feeding their workforce. They've got a staff canteen. Obviously, this makes it a really great facility and something that can perhaps has been subsidised, perhaps be made even cheaper or potentially even free, one free meal a day. And I did go into one office in London that was absolutely full. I couldn't believe it. An office in the centre of London where everybody was in there. It was over 800 people. And I was having a coffee with the HR manager in the canteen, and it got to 12 o'clock and it just filled up. And she said, "Oh, we feed our staff. It's free meals. So if you want to make sure everybody's in work and to get people back to the office, feed them." I'd say that's a tip. I know that's not possible for everybody, but it is something that increasingly people are doing. And I was talking to someone the other day, we were talking about, should I send food parcels to my staff because they had a remote workforce? And I said, well, perhaps look at a different way of doing it. Maybe supermarket vouchers or something through the benefit system might be a more subtle way of doing that. But I also work with organisations that have hardship funds, that have set up hardship funds to support their individual workforces. There's quite a lot involved in that. If you're going to do that and you're going to administer a fund, give grants or loans to your workforce, you've got to have a think about what the criteria are, who would manage that process. So there's quite a lot involved in it. But it is a brilliant thing to do, in terms of practically helping, but also in demonstrating both to your staff and actually to your customer base that you're a really caring employer. Again, difficult for a lot of people to do. So a brilliant way of, I guess, ticking some of these boxes is making sure that you know what's available, freely available to help people with their finances, with their financial education, with financial problems. Obviously, our website, Money Helper, and our helpline is an information and guidance resource people can use. Obviously, the work that Matt's doing is absolutely vital and is something that you can signpost to. But also think about how you communicate those messages, because it can be quite difficult again if people are working remotely. So I'm getting a plug in for everyone here, but actually payroll is a brilliant way of doing that, because it can be the only time in a month that you get to communicate directly with your workforces when you send them a payslip. So think about how you communicate the good news and the support that's available to the people that you want to help.
Yeah, wonderful. So many good tips in there. We also spoke to an organisation last week who were giving a monthly payment to those that work from home to cover the energy costs and household costs, and that impact of people using their house as their workplace, which was another great example of something that organisations are doing to support. Now, what's like the maybe we'd have a volunteer for who to take this one in terms of that's the impact on like the employees and what employers can do. I guess what are the negative impacts on the employers, and how can the employers suffer from these employees struggling with debt? I mean, one of Claro's national research pieces last year found that 19% of employees were going to or planning on leaving their job if the cost of living crisis worsens in the next 12 months. So obviously retention being one issue, and I think a lot of young people might look to increasing their income, so therefore looking elsewhere for another job as one solution to the debt problems that they're in. Matt or Anna, perhaps, do you have any other ideas on how employees struggling with debt can impact the employers?
Well, I think just at the outset, having a strategy in place around mental health and financial well-being, both of those go hand in hand, but having those strategies in place and being really clear about what you offer as well as an employer does set you aside, and people do look for this now. It is a vital part of being an employer, is that you're able to provide some of these services for people and assistance as they might need it. So I think that's the first thing to say, is that you need to be looking at these things in order to start attracting the best people and then keeping them in your business. So I think those are the sort of main two things around attraction and retention. And clearly you want people to be productive at work as well. And if they're distracted by their financial stresses and they're not engaged with their work, they're not going to be as productive as you want them to be. Obviously, there's an impact there for you as an employer as well, and what you're able to get out of the sort of relationship you have with your employees. Then I think there are lots of stats that sit behind all of this, and Barclays did a really great report called The Last Taboo in the Workplace around financial well-being, and they found that the cost to employers of poor financial well-being within the workplace was approximately 4% of payroll. So you start to put kind of numbers behind it, and that feels very tangible, I think, for employers. There's another study as well, I actually forget where this one came from, but where people had put efforts into improving financial capability within their workforce, their general health scores, their GHQ scores had increased more than if they gave them £1,000 each pay rise. So when you start to think about cost-effective ways that you can engage and help your workforce as well, these are really good things. So I think there's lots to take away as an employer, that this is something that you need to take seriously, and it will make a tangible difference to your business. Matt, sorry, have you got anything to?
No, I thought that was really, just echo what you've said. In terms of some stats that we've seen, so we know that younger people are less likely than other age groups to seek debt advice. So those aged 25 to 34 being the least likely, with only 2 in 5, or 37% from our survey, saying that they'd be likely to seek that advice. So some really good tips from everyone on the call so far on what employers can do. But then some of those are not always affordable to all employers, right? Not everyone can afford 10% cost of living increases, or like Barclays have done, giving a one-off £1,200 payment to all their employers. We as a charity, we can't unfortunately afford to feed all of our workforce every day. But what we could do is promote this idea of speaking about money early. And if as an employer you go out to your workforce and say, this is what we can do, this is the cost of living increase that we can afford, these are the other activities that we can do, but this is where we can't do, and here's other organizations that can help. If as an employer we're promoting about, because as organizations we've got challenges as well, making the books balance, making sure we can heat our buildings, pay our staff payroll each year. If we start that conversation and make time during work hours to do it, that will be really helpful. The other stat I've got in terms of that, so our research shows that older age groups, those over 55, prefer to speak to somebody in person, but younger age groups not only want diversity of contact channel, be that WhatsApp, phone, in person or video, but also flexibility on appointment times. So 18 to 24-year-olds almost twice as likely to want to speak to somebody before working hours. And those, as you go through the age groups, the older they are, the more later in the day they want to see someone. So if we're having positive conversations, we're making it a safe space to speak to HR, to speak to someone in finance, but to find time and be signposting what you can do. I can share a link for we work with Notting Hill Genesis in the housing association kind of space, where we've got a bespoke landing page for their residents and their staff. So very happy to, after this webinar, to follow up with individuals where a bespoke landing page where we can tailor some of the messages to say, this is the advice that Debt-Free Advice can offer, but here's what your employer's doing as well. It might be an interest-free travel loan. It might be free lunches that you're doing. It might be financial coaching that you're offering as an organization. All of those things, we can tailor that so it feels like a safe space, and your employer is encouraging you to take positive steps to manage your money better.
Yeah, wonderful. The conversation is really nicely moving on to where we wanted to take it next, in terms of what solutions are out there that employers can leverage, free or otherwise, to support their employees. I just want to touch on one thing that Anna said before we move on to that, about to get the business case, to get the the buy-in from the organization and from employers who might themselves, the business might be struggling because of the impacts of the cost of living too, to put some resources, some time and effort behind financial well-being initiatives. They need to kind of see the numbers, and understand the negative impacts, understand the positive possibilities and benefits that can come from these types of initiatives. And handily enough, wink, wink, I'm just putting a link in the chat here to Claro's financial wellbeing calculator. Now, what that does is, as an employer, you can go on there, put your national average age of employees, that your average salary, how many of you there are and what industry you're in, and it scrapes various data and sources from Citizens Advice, Equifax, our own research, various very credible surveys and research that has been done to estimate how many of your employees might be in debt, how many of them do or don't have a rainy day fund, how many are contributing to their pension and various other things, and then what the benefit could be, some of them monetary, some of them retention and productivity, to you implementing some sort of financial wellbeing initiatives. So if you're not the decision maker in your organization and you want to get buy-in from leadership and elsewhere to put some resources behind financial wellbeing, then that might be a useful calculator for you to have a look at. Okay, great. So one of the questions in the Q&A is, how can I, as an employer, talk to the employees without crossing the work personal space? So Victoria, perhaps if I can ask you to take that one, how to facilitate those sorts of conversations, and then Anna and Matt, I'll bring you in for how your organizations can also help encourage those types of conversations too.
Yes, and it's a good question, because it is a tricky thing. It's difficult to initiate these kind of conversations, even in the home, to talk to people about money. So in the workplace, I think it's potentially it can be a bit of a minefield. I think it's one of the things that employers use Talk Money Week for. I'm involved in a lot of events this week, because it gives a cast iron excuse to start the conversation. Why have a financial wellbeing day in the workplace? What if it's Talk Money Week? It's a really good reason to do it. So I think that you can use initiatives like or media events like Talk Money Week to do this. Pension Awareness Week coming up at the end of November is another opportunity. So just really find an excuse. From my experience, though, working within the workplace with employers, with employees, at the moment, it is very welcomed. So don't be afraid. You could do a pulse survey and ask people what they want to find out about, what they'd like to know more about. But I certainly find that any audiences that I encounter really engaged, really keen to come talk about more information, really, guidance about what the options are, about the best choices they can make about their money. People won't stand up in a room and say, I'm overburdened with debt, and they're not going to do that. In fact, pensions tends to be probably the safest topic that people will talk about. But I think it prompts people to think about other aspects that they're concerned with. So have a wellbeing event, have a general wellbeing event where you're looking at mental wellbeing, physical well-being and financial well-being, and then you basically start to normalize it within the workplace setting. We've got lots of resources that you could use. You don't necessarily have to have somebody come and talk to people about financial well-being in the first instance. Gauge how it goes, and then next time give it 6 months, or even make it an annual event. You can delve a bit deeper. I think also make sure that you are actively listening to what your team is saying to you. If you're a line manager or you work in a central department like HR, if people are coming in and appearing worried or stressed or asking for time off, look for the signs of people asking if they have something like a salary advance. These are all indicators that people might be feeling stressed or might be in difficulty with money. So active listening, encouraging people to talk, and it's a tricky one. You know, I talked about some of the things that people are doing to help their workforce that cost money, and it's sometimes quite difficult to make ex gratia payments because of the tax implications. But one thing that lots of employers can do is give the gift of time. And if you know that somebody's been brave enough to reveal that they're stressed about money, and for example could do with some debt advice, why not give them the gift of time? Give them a private space in the workplace and an hour, perhaps at the end of their shift or first thing, where they can have a conversation with a debt advisor. They can get in touch with one of the organisations that we support. Obviously, can get in touch with Debt Free London if they're in London. Have a conversation, have a one-to-one conversation, or a video call with somebody. That's a really, really valuable thing that you can do as an employer. And you know, that's obviously a progression of the conversation, but it could be something that you could build into a comms plan as well.
Gosh, so many brilliant ideas there, Victoria. Thank you. Yeah, using milestones in your own business cycle, in the like economic financial calendar, with your kind of pay reviews, bonus seasons, like whatever it may be, using those moments as prompts to remind people that these conversations can be had, and reminding them what you do have available to support them, and signposting. So if the Bank of England changes the interest rate, use that as an opportune moment to remind people what's available to open those conversations. If you've just, you know, published your annual report for your business, or you're going through a particular cycle in your business, use that as an opportune moment to encourage people to be transparent about their personal finances as well. Obviously in a psychologically safe, confidential, trusted environment. Clara has a financial wellbeing calendar that has kind of all of those opportune moments in the year, like Talk Money Week, like ISA season, all those times through the year that might be a moment where it's an appropriate time for you to prompt having these conversations. I can share that around with everybody when we share the recording afterwards. Anna, let's bring you in here. So having these human conversations are, you know, invaluable, and it does provide that private human to human space where people can open up about this very personal topic of debt. But like Matt alluded to earlier, a lot of young people are also very open to using tech solutions out there to find these you know, tools and features and apps and various other things that can support them with building that financial resilience, with overcoming their debt, which are really important, you know, to gain momentum, to put those good habits in place, and they might not be ready to have the human conversation. So how have Pay Captain kind of leveraged those tech innovations and tech solutions to support people with building their financial resilience, and obviously the benefits of employers to be able to offer those solutions at scale?
Okay, so I think one important thing that we emphasize when people are introducing Pay Captain into the business is that it needs to fit within a sort of broader cultural piece for them as well. So we're definitely not just a payroll solution, and we encourage the employers that we work with to make sure that they're building a culture around financial awareness and financial resilience, which is very non-judgmental, that they emphasize that if somebody is in you know, a difficult financial position or financially stressed, that generally that is a temporary state. It's not a reflection of somebody's character. It doesn't make them a bad person. It's a temporary state that anybody can find themselves in. So building that culture around all of this is really important, so people feel like they've got a safe space to channel queries and questions through, be it in person or via tech. Now, Pay Captain itself has lots and lots of resources within the app, and I think one of the reasons that I became particularly passionate about Pay Captain in particular, because payroll is not always the most exciting subject. Sorry, payrollers, if you're on here as well, but payroll as a way of engaging your employees is amazing. Pay Captain's adoption of the Pay Captain app is, on average, it's 93%. That you will rarely find a benefit that gets engaged with to that level. So the fact that we're able to offer nudges and suggestions around things that will potentially be beneficial for people to do with their finances, related to their finances, and particularly to do with their income, obviously it's payroll, at points when they're actually happening as well in their employee cycle, make a massive difference. So, one of the examples that I would kind of bring out is this piece around, actually, if you have been paid less on average this month, it's possible to have a suggestion to say, you've received a lower average pay this month than previously. How do you want to approach that? Are you happy that you've got the right tools in place to approach it? Do you want to speak to anyone? We've got the financial wellbeing surveys as well throughout the app, so people can then put in information around what their current state is, and we can obviously put in place signposting again as well for those to help if they need to do debt consolidation or they need some help via the Money and Pension Service Money Helper. But I mean, there's endless possibility to what you can do via payroll because of the level of engagement. Yeah, I could go on, I think, but I know that we're getting short on time, so.
No, that's wonderful. I'm definitely sold after that. I totally agree with you. It's all about making it as easy as possible for people to engage in these solutions, and what employer doesn't want that level of uptake and engagement with the benefits that they're offering. Yeah, like you said, we've got 13 minutes left. We've got a couple of questions in the Q&A that we'll address now. If anybody else wants us to answer anything before the end, please do submit your questions. One question we have here, I'll tackle this one first, everyone, and then bring you in if you want to add anything. Is it possible to train team managers to be able to handle money-related stress issues of their employees? Yes, we at Claro think so, and I think any managers listening to this discussion will agree. A money conversation with each of your team members will be very different from the other, because they're all bringing their own financial situation and their own relationship with money to that conversation. At Claro, we offer coaching packages around different financial topics. So overcoming debt, building financial resilience, optimizing your savings, etc. One of them is specifically, targeted at managers. So how to have effective money conversations at work. So it gives you a safe, confidential space to think about how you might want to approach that conversation, scenarios that might come up in that conversation and how you might manage those, how to have empathetic conversations with people in different financial situations. So please do get in touch with us if you're interested in that. And one other thing that we're launching is financial first aiders. So I think Victoria mentioned mental first aiders earlier on in the conversation, which is now thankfully a very widespread role that people have in organizations, and Claro are launching a training program for you to have financial first aiders in your organization, how to identify people who might be struggling with financial stress, having somebody on the floor or on chat or Slack or whatever your internal forums are, where they know that they can confidentially go to, and that person is equipped with resources to signpost people to for their support, to promote your employer benefits and let them know what's available to them, so they can make the most of those and to be financial wellbeing champions in the organization, to create those two-way communications between leadership and teams about what it is that your employees might want. There's someone who can test out financial wellbeing initiatives that you're thinking about launching before you implement them more broadly. So that could be a really effective role to introduce into your organization. Does anybody else have anything to add to the question? Is it possible to train managers to be able to handle money-related stress issues of their employees?
I was just going to add, I've popped in a couple of links to some free mental health first aider courses as well that are available at the moment, because the two they're inextricably linked, aren't they? They tend to feed each other. So having that awareness, or indeed the financial first aid awareness, I think either of those would be really good ways to start.
Great, thanks, Anna. And then another question we have, perhaps we'll bring Matt back into the conversation for this one. Who can we bring into my organization to talk to my employees to initiate such conversations? What are the titles or qualifications I should look for in them?
So we at Debt Free Advice, Debt Free London, very happy to come in and do a webinar, or if you're physically located in London, to come into your office and do a talk on this. I think there's quite a lot of value of having somebody external who is a debt advisor by trade or money coach by trade to come in and give that expert advice. It also gives the opportunity for staff that might be ever slightly embarrassed to share with their employer. Despite all the good stuff we're doing to try and normalise speaking about this, there will still be some stigma attached. They might not want that raised internally. So yeah, please do reach out to us and we'll see what we can do.
Great, thanks, Matt. And Victoria, maybe you can comment on this, on the second part of the question. What are the titles or qualifications I should look for in them from Money and Pension Service? And a lot of organizations ask us when we speak to them about financial well-being, like, there are so many sources out there, so much noise, with like the growth of financial influencers, etc., and content coming from all sorts of sources about tips for navigating the cost of living crisis. How can an employer ensure that who they are using or partnering with to support them with this are credible and trustworthy?
Yeah, I think that's quite a difficult question, because there are a lot of organizations that have a very strong commercial urge, let's put it that way, to offer information or offer advice within or offer financial well-being support within the workplace, and actually what they want is to sell financial products. And I think that's a real tricky thing. So I think Matt touched on this, it's around guidance. A good starting place actually is us. It's part of our role as regional managers. I'm one of them, to help people in the workplace, to help people working within HR who want to bring financial well-being in the workplace. We have quite a light touch. We're an information guidance and support organisation, but we can certainly start the conversation. And again, like Matt, I'm quite happy to go if it's local, to go into organisations and put on and take part in live events. I'm doing one later in the week. We do obviously we've got used to lots of Zooming, but I've got colleagues all over the country who will do the same thing. We also will work with organisations like, I'm going to have to get used to this, Debt Free Advice. We'll do co-pro, so we'll go and work. We'll put on events with them as well. So we're not quite turning up mob-handed, but we can offer a broader breadth of experience. We also have a fantastic pensions outreach team. If I know it might sound strange we're talking about younger people, but actually I'm going to say this, that the earlier you get on the pensions journey, the easier it will be, as particularly as you get older like me. If you've got a good savings pot behind you, and it is an important part of the remuneration package, and something that pensions education is a really key part of what we do as well. So we've got an outreach team as well. So it's really what you're looking for is people who are guiders, people who are not going to be trying to sell financial products. directly to employees. As you know, it could be part of the package, but not in the first instance. I think that's something that's really important. It's the safe space, because that's what you want, is people to feel safe and they're not going to get sold to. Everyone's frightened of being sold to. So I think that's a key area, and it's around education as well, about supporting people to empower themselves and make the right kind of choices. So you know, look for providers that offer a more holistic approach. Obviously I'm going to plug Claro, because I think this is something that you guys do. Really thrilled about the financial first aiders. It's something that we piloted a couple of years ago, and I'm really pleased it's been picked up, because I think it's a really important first step. So that's what I've got to say on that topic. We have got some resources that are suitable for the workplace, one of which is a guide specifically for 16 to 25-year-old young adults. I'm going to put the link up in the chat in a moment, and it is really just covers everything that a young person who's going out into independent life and starting to work, live independently, needs to know about money. You know, really from the basics about, if you're renting a property with other people, how do you split the bills, calculating how much you can afford on rent, calculating credit. It's comprehensive. It could be part of an induction piece for employers. You could use that as part of your induction process. So for people to check out, everything that we've got is freely available. So I'll pop that in the chat too, just to give people a shortcut to finding it.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you, Victoria. Yeah, at Claro, we designed the business intentionally to just be education and guidance, and not offer any financial products alongside that, to ensure that we kind of remained objective. And we also have all of our financial coaches are in-house, so they are not incentivized for, you know, additional business or follow-up sessions, again, so we can ensure that objectivity remains. So thinking about asking those sorts of questions and looking at the business model of those that you're working with. Okay, great. This has gone so quickly. We've only got a few minutes left. So just a prompt for Victoria, Matt and Anna to share any contact details or resources that they want to with everybody before we close. A reminder to everyone that you will get all of the links that have been shared in the chat in the email when we share the recording after the session. Thank you for all of the great questions and discussion. Oh, let me just check this last one that's come through. Many of our employees are on field, not necessarily on a computer. What sort of options are available to include them into financial wellbeing discussion? Great. Okay, well, let's use that as our final question. So I'll ask all of you to perhaps share how each of your organizations can support employees who aren't working in front of a laptop all day. Here at Claro, we have the digital platform where you can have on-demand courses and content that it's a web-based app on your phone, where you can do the on-demand courses and content at any time that suits them. Financial wellbeing coaching sessions can be organized within our capacity around people's work schedules. Anna, should we start with you? Then I'll go with Matt. Then I'll go to Victoria about how each of your organizations can support people in the field, and then we'll close. Anna.
Yeah, I mean, this is really common for pay captain customers, but the way that we can make a difference and you know, making sure that you're picking something that everybody is able to access. All of the pay captain information is housed in an app, which most people now have a smartphone. So if they are out and about, they'll be able to look at that information on the go and use the live chat, access the information, check their pension pots, look at what they're earning, make their savings, charity donations, all sorts of stuff just via the app. So that would be my number one tip: get an app.
Great, thank you. Matt.
So our advice is available in our 30 different face-to-face advice centres across London, with the full details on our website. Is also available via video chat in your browser on your phone. So young people are definitely going to have, if they don't have a work laptop, they'll have a personal phone, which perhaps is even better for them, because they won't be worried about their employer knowing that they've accessed that information. It's completely confidential on their own device, and it can be done via web chat or WhatsApp as well, access into our service, so they don't have to show their face if that's something that's holding them back as well. I just want to emphasize that like how important it is during Talk Money Week to speak about financial difficulties, especially if your employers are in debt. Too many people that come to us talk about how they just don't want to be here anymore. And research out this year from Young Minds talk about young people under 25 having now the highest suicide rates for the last 30 years. This is only going to get worse. We can do so much to get those conversations in early and to encourage those people. If people have moved to a city like London or somewhere else, they're likely to have moved away from their families to start a job. That support network that they had while they're growing up might not be there anymore. The more we can do, use this week as an excuse, use Pensions Week, as Victoria said, that's coming up, anything as an excuse, but to signpost people, because there's so much help and support out there. We just need to connect up our colleagues to make sure that they access that support.
Thank you, Matt. A really important reminder of the importance and significance of what we're talking about here. Any final thoughts from you, Victoria?
Obviously, we can cover the same channels as everybody else has described. As long as somebody's got a smartphone, they can access really any of our services. But actually, sometimes that's almost too sophisticated. So for those employers who maybe have, I don't know, warehouse settings, or people who are working in a more physical way, who never access a computer as part of their working day, we can be quite old-fashioned. We produce posters, we do printed guides. We can make it sort of more subliminal, the messaging. Also, particularly people who are perhaps working in a healthcare setting. Actually having posters on walls and breakout areas where people can see that there is help available. We have some really good printed resources that either be downloaded or can be obtained from me. Happy to send them out, happy to signpost people to those. And I think just remember that, and I think Matt touched on this, is finding a channel that people are comfortable communicating to use. Younger people do tend to actually prefer WhatsApp. It's a great one also for taking a picture of confusing financial jargon and sending it to somebody and saying, what does this mean? Particularly if it's to do with the debt or with the credit terms. So it's just being aware that there are multiple channels and we're there to support them. But as I say, if somebody wants to be old-fashioned and wants to put posters up around their workspace, we have got them, and they are amazingly popular. And also we're also trying to produce more and more material in different languages as well, because we do recognise that sometimes people like to talk, if English isn't their first language, they might want to talk to somebody about these topics or recognise these topics in their native language. So I think that's something that's really important. We do offer language line too on our helpline. And again, if people are employing young people who perhaps have come from abroad, that might be something that's important, because again, money can be culturally different too, and we should acknowledge that. So that's my last thoughts. Try and talk to people in the way and in the way that they're going to feel comfortable about talking about money.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Victoria, Matt and Anna, for being with us this morning. Really rich conversation with such important messages and lots of ideas for solutions, and how we connect people in an inclusive, accessible way to the solutions that they need access to, and how that might benefit both them as individuals and their employers too. It's been so lovely to speak to all of you, and thanks everyone for joining, and we hope that we can continue the conversation with all of you in various different ways. We will get the recording and links to you very soon. But thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your weeks and Talk Money Week.